DVB, Digital Fast.
Hello and welcome to the DVB Newsroom. I'm your host Nora. Joining me today is Salai Ling, the Executive Director of the Chin Human Rights Organization. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
To start off, you visited Timor-Leste to share evidence of crimes committed by the Myanmar military. How were you able to open this case?
Well, first, we looked at the countries in Southeast Asia, see where we might be able to find an avenue which allows for universal jurisdiction cases to be filed. And first, we attempted one in the Philippines, and we submitted a case in the Philippines, but it's still ongoing. But when we also took a look at Timor-Leste, they have similar legal system whereby universal jurisdiction can be filed for crimes of serious international nature. So that's when we decided we would try the case in Timor-Leste.
Can you explain what is the legal principle of universal jurisdiction?
Universal jurisdiction basically allows national or domestic courts to investigate and prosecute international crimes, crimes that are so serious that it warrants, the attention of international judicial mechanisms. And these includes crimes such as genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. And all of those crimes, as we know, have allegedly been committed by the military junta.
Mm-hmm. In Timor-Leste, who formally accepted your complaint, and what happens next?
Well, we filed the case in early January, and we submitted the case with the Department of Justice of Timor-Leste, which then, after due review of the case, appointed a special prosecutor to look into the case, whether it merits further investigation.
Mm-hmm. Why is universal jurisdiction is important when the justice is blocked inside Myanmar?
Exactly for that reason, because we don't have a justice system independent of the political bodies in Myanmar, especially under the military regime which controls everything. So people do not have access to justice inside the country, and no recourse whatsoever, because the military is both the perpetrator and the judge. In that situation, we are left with no other choice but to try the case elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As you have mentioned earlier, the case in the Philippines is ongoing. Can you share us more about it?
Certainly. We submitted the case back in 2024, where basically we identified alleged perpetrators of war crimes committed in the process of military advances in Chin State post-coup, where they committed mass atrocities against the local population, especially the destruction of Thantlang town, which happens to be my birthplace. The town has now been totally leveled to the ground, and the military was engaging in clearance operations where they committed mass atrocities, destruction of properties, arbitrary killings, massacres, you name it. And so we submitted those cases in the Philippines, but the Department of Justice has not acted upon the complaint. So we decided to appeal the case with the same Justice Department last year. And it's still under consideration. We haven't been given a court docket number, but we will also try and appeal it to the Appellate Court of Philippines all the way up to the Supreme Court if necessary. So what we're hoping to achieve is build a legal noose around the members of the regime so that they won't feel safe even in their own backyard.
Can you share more about the evidence you've gathered in Myanmar since the 2021 military coup?
Yeah, we've documented hundreds of cases of serious international crimes, including crimes that I just named, mass destruction, civilian population totally devastated by it, mass killings, arrest, forced displacement. So all of those cases, unfortunately, everyone in Myanmar is affected one way or another. They have gone through similar experiences. And the case that we brought from Chin State speaks only to those, representative cases, and it's only a tip of the iceberg.
How do you verify this evidence before submitting it to the prosecutors?
Well, we have been documenting human rights violations committed by various regimes over the past 30 years. We have a very high standard of documentation. Also, when investigate those cases, it's often we revisit the case after the initial assessment of the case and then speak to survivors, speak to different people who have knowledge of the incident, and we corroborate with third-party testimonies, with video evidence, material evidence, and even satellite imagery and drone aerial documentation. And we have been assisted throughout the development of these cases by a group of international lawyers who reviewed the initial cases that we document, identify gaps, and also that they meet the threshold of international legal requirement.
So as you have mentioned, you've been able to visit and speak to survivors of the Myanmar military's crime. What did they tell you?
Well, everyone has a story to tell. And you can say that the entire population in Myanmar is personally affected. Either their loved ones have been violated, killed, or their properties being illegally destroyed. So all of the survivors we spoke to, the victims, they describe horrific nature of the crimes. And we are saying these things, describing these things as crimes against humanity, because it's so shocking that you can't just walk away from the crimes itself. It's a crime against your own conscience. It's so unimaginable that once you witness and you personally speak to survivors, it brings reality. What if this is me? And that is a very powerful story. And survivors often tend to choose to remain silent. But this time around, people want to see some form of justice. So they forced themselves, they convinced themselves that by telling their own story, that somehow justice may come to them. So we are not going to see justice immediately overnight. But what is different around this time, people will not forget the crimes, nor these crimes can be erased because we have all documented those crimes. We have the evidence, and the United Nations also has mandated the independent investigative mechanisms for Myanmar, especially for this. So all of the crimes being committed are being recorded so that even when Myanmar sees some sort of political settlement, that these crimes will not be forgotten, and perpetrators will see international justice at some point.
So what do they need most right now? I mean, like justice, protection, or humanitarian aid?
Well, the first thing people want to see for themselves is to live in peace and dignity. And that has been, to some extent, thriving in areas liberated by the resistance. And the military regime is keenly aware of that. And that's why they are intent on destroying lives that are being rebuilt. And that's why they are targeting civilian infrastructures, civilian governance structures that are emerging from those areas outside of its control. But at the end of the day, every crime committed brings them closer to international justice.
How many people in Chin State have been displaced from their homes due to conflict since the military coup?
Well, it's truly an unprecedented scale of displacement that we have seen in Chin State. Since the coup, we now have more than half of the population being displaced, both internally and into India and elsewhere, even as far as Malaysia. And the intensity, the ever-intensifying conflict, and also the mass force recruitment is displacing more people, younger people. And in those places where internally displaced people are living, they are also living in constant fear of airstrikes and other form of violence. Now the military is trying to advance into Chin State again, and it started in their preparatory period for the elections, and it has slowly intensified since then. They have increased the number of airstrikes since September, and now they are trying to advance into Chin State using ground forces, which they haven't been able to do in a long time. And now we're seeing people being displaced from their villages, and the military, when they are instructed with the order to destroy everything in their path, that's what exactly they are doing. They're burning villages, they're destroying properties, so that people are unable to continue living in those areas. So we are seeing an intensification of violence, even the use of ground forces.
Do you know how many have been killed since then?
Close to 1,000, according to the documentation that we have managed to confirm, and that this is only those that we can, confirm. Even an airstrike, deaths from airstrike constitute more than half of those killed. So the other people who have been killed is either by landmine or massacres, or as a result of torture, enforced disappearance. So all sorts of serious violations being committed, and the result is total devastation.
Speaking about airstrikes, you have reported over 1,000 airstrikes on Chin State since 2022, or one airstrike per day. Is this true?
Yeah, totally. And that doesn't account for airstrikes that have been targeted in the front line. Those are strikes that have been directed at communities and that has been launched into villages and in order to destroy lives that are being rebuilt within Chin State.
What does this tell you about the military strategy? I mean, the frequency and the targeting of these strikes.
This is a pattern. It's a deliberate policy where they want to destroy everything in their path. And it's as simple as that. When the military says it's launching clearance operations, clear everything on your path, shoot everything that moves. And that's the order. And we have, through various means of verification, including interviews with former Army officers, there's been an established pattern of orders that compel military personnel to engage in destruction of lives. And that's why we're calling it war crimes and crimes against humanity.
At least 78 charges in Chin State have been destroyed. Do you believe the military is deliberately targeting these sites of worship, and why?
Yeah, obviously, we have a historical record of the military whenever they come to power targeting religious minorities, and that's an established fact. But after the coup, that policy of discrimination has changed, transformed into a more violent form. So when the military came to a village, the first thing they do, they occupy the church, stayed in it, defile the church, and burn the church down. And when they are not able to go there physically, they launch the airstrikes targeting the church. So, for example, this Sunday, the very Sunday, they target a worship service and dropped a bomb while people are worshiping on a Sunday morning, killing one child and injuring many people. And this has been enabled by international aviation fuel supplies that have gone unchecked. And this must be viewed as a failure on the part of the international community to enforce sanctions. And every unchecked supply of aviation fuel is a death sentence for the Burmese people. So the military has an inherent policy that has been institutionalized and practiced through policy and law for a very long time, discriminating ethnic and religious minorities in the country. And this is a continuation of that policy, only it has become violent. And we have, since the coup, documented at least 140 churches and religious buildings, including Buddhist monasteries and pagodas, being targeted. So the military, while it also discriminates against religious minorities, has no respect for any religion.
Do you feel this case in Timor-Leste is turning point for the people of Myanmar in pursuit of justice and accountability?
I really hope so, because we have no other recourse. And East Timor offers a very optimistic prospect because Timor has, even though they are a very young democracy, they have a vibrant judicial system, independent judiciary, and they also have similar experience of going through the very same thing that we're going through today. And we believe that the East Timor judicial the judiciary system would be at some point deliver the kind of justice that we're seeking. And I also need to emphasize the fact that, people have tended to ask whether Timor-Leste, being a very small country, whether they can afford to, deliver justice while their own domestic legal system is overwhelmed. But the fact is that we have done our part in meticulously documenting all the violations, the evidence, gathering all the evidence, and not just us. It's the IIMM that has millions of records. So we will not be overwhelming East Timor judiciary system. The IIMM could provide all of those resources.
So how do you work with them, the IIMM?
Well, their mandate requires them to provide evidence and records that they have gathered, and their very mandate requires that if a national judicial mechanism asks them to assist and turn over whatever that they have, that they're obligated to do so. So it's just a matter of requesting, in an email or some form of communication that we need this evidence.
How long could the legal process in Timor-Leste take realistically?
Well, realistically speaking, any kind of international legal adjudication is taking a long time. But it's not just the very visible prosecutorial exercise in court. It starts with an arrest warrant, and it starts with all other basic legal, requirements that prosecutors need to do. And let's say a court in East Timor issues an international arrest warrant against those 14 individuals that we identified, then they would think twice about traveling internationally before they decided to do so. So it's also a matter of not just pushing the legal boundaries within Southeast Asia, but also providing a sense of hope and justice for communities and individuals who have suffered so much. And it's a form of acknowledgement by the international community is a small form of justice for the victims and survivors.
Are you planning to pursue this case in any other countries under universal jurisdiction?
Well, we are certainly looking into other avenues, but our preference remains within this region. Whether or not legal experts would agree that certain countries have universal jurisdiction mechanisms in their domestic system, that's a different question, but we are committed to pursuing justice anywhere. We're not limited in our quest for justice.
Before we end, is there anything you would like to say to the people of Myanmar?
Well, to the people of Myanmar, justice may take a long time, but the case in East Timor suggests that this is where it begins. It can begin for the people of Myanmar. And we don't have to suffer in silence. Every dictator, every tyrant in the world eventually meets their end. And we are hoping that through the determination and persistence of the people of Myanmar, justice will finally come to them. And to the people of Chin, we have suffered so much. It's unprecedented in our history, but that doesn't mean that this will continue. And for the rest of the country, really, that we are on the side of the truth, and the truth always prevails.
Thank you for your time, Salai.
Thank you so much.
After this interview was recorded, Myanmar's military authorities expelled a senior diplomat from Timor-Leste. The regime's foreign ministry said on Monday that it ordered the head of Timor-Leste's embassy to leave the country by February 20th. It cited legal proceedings filed by CHRO against the Myanmar military in a Timor-Leste court. In response, Delhi criticized Naypyidaw for the expulsion. It reaffirmed its support for democracy in Myanmar. Timor-Leste has been one of the strongest voices in Southeast Asia, calling for accountability in Myanmar after the 2021 military coup.